Recording, there we go. All right, now we're recording. So I will let you know, everybody, that we are recording this session so that it'll be available afterwards for review if you missed today. We will ask you to, again, to keep video and microphone on mute, ask questions in the chat box, which is under the participant section. And we'll basically be taking questions at the end. And there is a hand raise feature in the participants box. We're not sure everyone will be able to, we'll get to everyone. Just depends on how many people end up joining the call. If it's not too big, then we'll try to get to everybody's questions. But we'll do our best. So we'll do our presentations first, and then we'll have questions. So I'm gonna go now to next slide, which is our introduction. Once again, I'm Sylvia Herzog. I am with the Charcoal Project, which is a US-based nonprofit that focuses on finding solutions to the unsustainable use and production of charcoal. We do that by helping clean energy entrepreneurs develop their businesses primarily. We also do some advocacy and just in general try to promote the sector. I've been with the Charcoal Project for about 10 years. My background is in banking and I have a lot of experience working with entrepreneurs. So I'm very happy to know most of you. And if I haven't met you, I hope I'm meeting you soon, either online or someday in person. Also with us today is Dan Sweeney from MIT D-Lab. I'll have him do a more thorough introduction, but I just wanted to let you know that we've been a partner for D-Lab for about almost 10 years, and they have been a really strong advocate for the charcoal briquette sector and have been a great resource for research and technical expertise. So we're very glad to have Dan with us today. One other group that I want to introduce is the United Briquette Producers Association, this is a group that we helped form about 1.5 years ago, which the group was formed basically to give producers of briquettes in Kenya a voice together and to create a community of practice so they could share resources and network. And it's been a good group so far. I like to give a shout out to Dorothy Atieno, who's the chairperson of the event committee and helped us plan this webinar as well as other events for UBPA. And then the final group I just want to mention is the Mennonite Economic Development Association. Their Kenya group has provided us with some grant money to support UBPA this year, and that's one of the reasons why we're able to do this webinar today. Just to go over quickly what the agenda will be. Because I mentioned the primary reason for doing the webinar is because the coronavirus has ripped through all of our economies and societies and really had a big impact on our businesses and our social impact. So we are trying to help people figure out how to adapt to the new world of social distancing. And it's been difficult all over the world, and there's many unique problems for briquette producers, which is why we wanted to put this webinar together. So first, we're going to start with Dan Sweeney, who's going to talk about operational spacing in production and some best practices. And then I'll take over and talk more about automating payments and orders by using some online platforms. And then we'll open it up for questions. So with that, I am going to unshare my screen and turn it over to Dan.
Great. Thanks so much, Sylvia. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Thanks for that introduction, Sylvia. And I'll start sharing my screen. Just briefly, again, I'm Dan Sweeney. I'm a researcher at MIT D-Lab. And as Sylvia mentioned, we've been working together with the Charcoal Project for quite a long time. I originally started working with Sylvia on the Harvest Fuel Initiative back in 2013, focused mainly on technology and R&D in the charcoal briquette space. And we've continued to develop that relationship and work together. And it's great because I think a lot of the people on this call are familiar faces. And yeah, it's just a great group of people that I'm very happy to work with. So today's topic that I'm going to speak about, as Sylvia mentioned, is focused on social distancing during production and manufacturing, and how we can adapt to COVID-19 and the future paradigm shift that's brought to our businesses. So this is kind of just building on some of the messaging that we've gotten from various global health bodies, the World Health Organization. So I've just done a little bit of background research, and I'm going to share some of that with you. I think there's been a lot of webinars on how to adapt to COVID as a business, as an individual. And I think one of the great things that getting this group together helps us to do is to focus a lot of that general recommendations and guidance to our more specific situation as briquette producers. So I'll try to, I've got a few ideas that are more tailored for our operations as well. But we'll start off with a little bit of general overview. So our kind of business as usual, this is a photo from one of our friends in Uganda in a factory that we've had a lot of involvement in. And our business as usual isn't probably very well adept to working within the COVID-19 world. We a lot of times aren't following very closely our PPE guidelines or guidance. Our employees are, obviously not social distancing. We're in close quarters, oftentimes small spaces, especially on our factory floors. And this, I think, may be an opportunity to start to implement a lot of those things that we've talked about in terms of personal safety and the safety of our workplace. In addition to, protecting our employees and making a safe place for them, also putting into place those routines and guidance. So just briefly though, what do we know about how COVID is transmitted? Why are we having this discussion? What's the current knowledge? Well, from what I could find through conversations and reading online and reading some research that's come out recently, there's still a lot of unknowns, but the whole thing starts with a virus particle. So in our sector, we actually know a little bit about particles. The unique thing about the coronavirus is that the particle size is very small. So probably a lot of us are familiar with PM 2.5, this 2.5 micron particles that are emitted when we burn traditional stoves in high quantities. So the coronavirus particles are much, much smaller than that. They're about 0.1 micrometer. And what that means is that they're easily entrained into the air. So from a respiratory perspective, anytime that someone that's infected exhales, coughs, sneezes, they release a lot of droplets which contain virus particles. So the coronavirus at such a small size can easily be transmitted via respiratory means. So this is part of the reason that we're encouraged to social distance. There's different guidance on how far away we should be from each other. But in general, I think we're narrowing down on about 2 meters, 6 feet. So the second form of transmission is called aerosol transmission. Aerosol basically means you have a small particle, like our coronavirus particle. It's emitted and it remains entrained in the air. It stays in the air for some time. So these tiny respiratory droplets remain entrained for up to several hours, actually. So this can be especially important if you're in a confined space. After the respiratory event has happened, somebody sneezed, they've released a bunch of particles, and those can remain in the area for some time. So there's actually some measures we can take around that as well. Finally, the last mode of transmission is surface. So maybe through a sneeze or aerosol entrained in the air. things settle onto metal, wood, whatever surfaces. Our cell phone screens, I think, are a common one. And depending on the type of surface, they can remain there for somewhere between 24 and 72 hours and remain active, where they can actually infect us. So the mode there is, there would be coronavirus particles on a surface, and then you've touched that and then somehow transmitted that into your either mouth or nose through your mucous membranes, respiratory tract. The particles are able to enter your body. So just a little bit of background there. There's a bunch of best practices from the WHO on getting us ready to go back to work and getting your workplace ready. So I wanted to quickly share those so that those of us who are thinking about reopening soon, or maybe you're opening at a lower capacity, some actions that you can take here. So what WHO tells us is we should promote having a hygienic workplace. And one of the ways to do that is to regularly disinfect our workplace. So I know, a number of offices and businesses that are reopening are actually doing a daily disinfectant, especially in kind of high traffic, office areas where light switches, doorknobs, those kinds of things are daily, on a daily basis, disinfected. So these are all part of, I guess all of these points can be a part of our response plan and our reopening plan. So you might think about those. Also, we'll be sharing these slides. So if you do want to take these and incorporate them into your reopening plan, feel free to use those. So then I think another thing that was important from the best practices is we encourage anybody that's sick to obviously stay at home and remain home, ideally for 2 weeks is the current guidance. But employees should know that, that is a part of the policy now in the workplace. Second is to promote hand washing. So this addresses that surface transmission mode. And that making that easy by placing hand sanitizer and disinfectant soap around the workplace. So in a lot of factories, a few factories that I've spoken with, they're keeping hand sanitizer at doors or near people's workstations actually, so that they can use those frequently. I know in our sector, people are obviously, gloved or their hands are covered in a bunch of other things. So I think encouraging people to regularly, wash hands is important. A lot of times they'd be doing that anyway. I know in some of the factories in our group, people keep those hand washing stations just outside of the factory space. Signage that helps to remind employees can be helpful. And WHO, and actually there's a few organizations in Kenya that have created context-specific signs, for example, in Swahili, which businesses can use around their workplace. So also promoting good respiratory hygiene in the workplace. One of the best ways to do that is to encourage people to wear face masks, actually mandating them to wear face masks. I know a lot of us are already doing that anyway. I'll speak a little bit more about face masks. I think there's an interesting piece with those specifically, but actually supplying those in the workplace and supplying the proper type is important. And then just communicating safe respiratory hygiene. Again, posters and including these in your team meetings. Somebody happens to not be wearing a mask and they're going to sneeze, sneeze into your arm or into your shirt as much as possible. Additional advice is to advise employees and customers to check on travel restrictions. So I know in Nairobi, there's been limited travel. Actually, at times it seems like no travel. Where I am in Mumbai, we've also been unable to travel for the past couple of months. So just making sure that people are checking that and knowing when they can travel, what documentation might be required. Reminding employees to stay home again, and especially in case of cough and fever. In this case, anything above about 37 degrees Celsius. Again, WHO and others just really emphasize being clear and communicating this, and especially from early on in the reopening process. Just letting all of your workers know what your policies are. And another thing that's important is that common medicines, paracetamol, ibuprofen, aspirin, those can actually mask symptoms. So somebody may, treat a fever by taking paracetamol and feel better. That doesn't mean they should be coming back to work. A few others, there's some businesses that are doing actual temperature checks. So having a thermometer at the workplace, or these IR infrared thermometers are now popular to do a body temperature check. And then obviously gloves and other PPE. In some cases, I know people are doing face shields, but at least gloves, ideally gloves that can be washable. And I have a couple ideas on that. So I think one of the big things is communicating to staff. And I just wanted to quickly flash up a couple of ideas that I have on that. One is an organization that's putting out some good communication materials that I think a lot of us could just take and use directly, print and laminate, or just post in the office and in your factory. But just common reminders for employees, I think, help us to implement those practices. Another thing is actually especially in India, I don't know as much in Kenya and elsewhere, but a lot of companies have been actually communicating their customers their hygiene practices, their safety practices. So here's an example from JUMIA, actually. So this is an example in Kenya and Nigeria, from their website. So they're talking about some of the practices in their warehouses that their employees take. And I think part of this is just to make their customers feel better about doing business with them. Another example in India, which I think is interesting, this is actually a delivery service called Zomato, which is really popular here. And this is obviously a very competitive space, Zomato and Uber. So Zomato is actually, it seems like they've used this as a part of their marketing to sort of gain the trust of their employees in a time when there's a real lack of trust, especially in delivering goods and safety. So they're doing a lot of communication toward customers about their safety practices. So on their app, in their website, web communications, even handouts that the drivers come with, they're really emphasizing safe practices. So contactless delivery, for example. So I thought that could also be an opportunity for our sector as well. I mean, we would anyway be delivering our product to customers of various types, and just ensuring those customers that you have a policy at your workplace, and you're putting that in place, and you are communicating that clearly, not only to your employees but also to those customers. So the part that I really wanted to talk about was on the factory floor. What are some things that you can start thinking about doing? And what effect might those have in reducing those transmission vectors that we were talking about? Again, respiratory, aerosol, and surface transmission are the main ones. So I'm just going to take us through a few scenarios. So some of this is borrowed from a few studies on guidance for manufacturers coming from different places. And then I've tried to kind of tailor those to sort of a hypothetical factory floor for us. So in general here, a few points to cover. Again, I think this is a great opportunity for us to implement some best practices that we've been thinking about for a while anyway, right? Safe use of PPE, not PPT, sorry about that. Personal protective equipment for workers, routines like cleaning and maintenance. Some of those can be difficult to really get into place and encourage employees to do. So this is actually a good chance to start establishing those routines. A lot of places are having mandatory or voluntary reductions in capacity, so meaning you're reducing the number of people at work every day. I couldn't find if Kenya is actually doing this, but I know many countries are. And, here in India, I think right now most places are saying 30% reduction in offices and manufacturing plants. So we need to be kind of clever about how we're going to do that and still keep our businesses running. Another guidance that I saw, which was interesting, is in the event that your leadership gets sick, actually staggering who's on site at any given time. So having, maybe a different manager on different days. so that if somebody does get sick, you've ideally got somebody who's healthy who can stand in. This, I think, is important as well on maintenance in our sector, because I know a lot of our equipment requires frequent maintenance, sometimes even daily maintenance on some of these machines. And losing a maintenance person, having to go into quarantine for 2 weeks, can really stifle the operation. So maybe identifying a backup, training somebody else to, for example, if you need to pull out your extruder screw and have it replaced every day, making sure there's somebody available who can do that. And rather than being, as with a lot of these things, rather than being reactive, trying to be more proactive about this. Having on-call staff in case of absences. In general, the social distancing guideline for workplaces, if we take it to be a 2-meter distance between people, it should be about 1 employee per, actually 4 square meters should be the correct one here. So that really limits how many people we can have in our workspaces. And I'll go through a little bit of scenarios here shortly. Real quick on face masks, though, a lot of questions that we've gotten on face masks, and I talked to a few experts regarding face masks. So the idea here is we're trying to reduce that respiratory and aerosol transmission. So one, if you are infected, you're not breathing, sneezing onto others, and if others are infected, you're not inhaling their infected particles. So this is recommended for everyone. I imagine most of us are doing this anyway. Best if these can be provided by the employer. And the standard right now is what's called an N95 mask. So one example of that is this 3M 8210, which was sold out for a long time. But there are other types of masks that can be suitable, although this is sort of the most cost-effective and most effective at reducing exposure. And I know this is actually available in Nairobi. I called a couple of suppliers to check on that. Now, in many places, we're probably seeing people who are using do-it-yourself DIY masks. So that could be a scarf wrapped around their face, any kind of fabric, or even some people are making masks out of different fabrics at home, selling those on the market. Are these okay? And so I actually spoke with some people who did some testing on different types of masks, DIY masks and the N95 masks, various types, a whole bunch. So this graph here shows basically the effectiveness of all of these different mask types at filtering out particles, small particles about the size of the coronavirus particles. Obviously, the most effective masks are our N95 and HEPA filters, surgical masks. So these are they're designed for this purpose. But there are actually some masks which can be made out of do-it-yourself materials, commonly available materials like kitchen towels and canvas that actually do a decent job. But the things that we should really avoid and really discourage in our workplaces and for everyone is scarves, neck warmers, bandanas, cotton t-shirts. These really don't do us any good at filtering out these fine particles. These people, Smart Air, the folks who did this study, they said an easy test that you can do is hold up your material up to the light, up to the sun, and look through it and see how much light passes through the material. If you see a lot of gaps and a lot of light passing through, then it's probably not a good filter. But again, it is possible for a DIY mask to do a decent job at filtering out particles. And so our workers, if we don't have a good supply of N95, 3M masks, then we can improvise some other solutions. Another PPE that can really help in reducing transmission is gloves. So this reduces surface transmission. Everybody should be wearing these in the factory space, especially. So a lot of recommendations are on latex gloves. And so I was thinking about latex in the factory. Sorry, there's a little bit of noise there. So would this person benefit much from wearing a latex glove, or would a latex glove survive for very long? Probably not. A couple of options that I think could be good, and which I actually saw recommended in a few places, are One that I like is these mechanics gloves. These are both woven fiber with some nice grippy material on the surface. So you might invest in some decent gloves and people might actually wear them and benefit from them in your workplace. Okay, so now I'll go through a couple scenarios for your factory floor and thinking about occupancy in the factory floor, because I know a lot of us are being encouraged to reduce occupancy. So here's my hypothetical factory floor. I've got raw materials, a milling space for crushing, a mixing space for mixing binder and char, and then a press machine. And typically here's kind of the mix of staff that I would have to keep that operation going. You'd have a couple people around the milling area to add raw materials and remove crushed char, somebody then transferring that into the mixer, somebody removing it from the mixer, and then a few people around the press who are removing briquettes and adding mixed char into the press. So it gets pretty crowded. We have a lot of people in close quarters. You remember the photo I showed earlier. Now, one proposed method is people are looking at what are called pods, and that's actually sectioning off parts of your workplace. So here's a McKinsey report that says in a warehouse type setting, you can put up these barriers and implement a few practices around those to basically limit people's interactions and especially keep those air spaces clear so that those employees, say one is sick, the chances of another one getting infected will go down significantly. So in our space, we might segment off parts of the factory, and some of us are doing this anyway. We have these in separated areas, but that allows us then to keep workers in these isolated areas and maybe even reduce our occupancy overall on the factory floor a little bit. You may need one person in each of these mixer areas, one person in the raw material area, and you'll probably still need a few people around the press, but overall, we can reduce our occupancy by about 25%, keeping around one team member per pod other than that briquetting section there. So pods are a possible option, and there's these strip curtains are a good way to create those without having to put up a real permanent rigid structure. So these just attach to an overhead rail or even a piece of timber. They allow people to pass through, material to pass through, but in the times that nothing is passing through, they create a nice barrier. Another option would be batch operation. So batch means we do kind of one process at a time. So maybe one day or for a half day, we'll be doing one thing. So here I've removed everybody except the press machine. So today we're briquetting. And that assumes that in the previous days or half days, we've milled and then mixed and then pressed. So we reduce our overall occupancy significantly, about 50% in my factory here. Although we probably reduce our output maybe by up to 70%. So if we have a high demand for our product, then this is obviously going to affect that. One case that I saw, they were overcoming that output reduction by doing shifts. So they had fewer workers at one time, but they split them into maybe 2 or 3 shifts a day going through this batch type process. So this is nice because it doesn't require us to modify our factory very much, but just plan our staffing and our shift if we decide to do that. Another one which I think could be easy to implement, maybe a lot of us have been thinking about it, are carts. And that you might wonder, how does that actually make a difference for our addressing the COVID situation? But I think it actually can. So here's our factory again. And this time we've introduced carts at 3 different places. So transporting material from the mill to the mixer, we have a cart. Transporting the mixer to the press machine, we have another cart, maybe 2 carts. And these actually create a chance for, say, this worker on the mill to fill a cart and leave it. So that when this worker is ready, they can come and take that. Therefore, there's no direct engagement between those two. And assuming they're wearing the right PPE, the surface of the cart should be safe as well. So actually, we can reduce our occupancy on the factory a little bit. And this actually helps promote distancing by creating that sort of exchange medium, the cart being the thing that's passed around and not necessarily people shifting around the factory. The photo that I showed before was Carlo's operation at Khmer Green Charcoal. He has a nice cart set up, and it assumes that your floor is somewhat clean and the carts can roll over it easily. So that might be challenging in some cases, but this cart system works really well. They move a lot, and they actually save their workers a lot of effort by having those. Another thing kind of illustrating in this photo is ventilation. So we actually know that transmission in outdoor areas is significantly lower. There's some research that has shown that. And that's mostly because, you're changing the air more frequently. So any particles that are infected, they'll eventually exit through the ventilated parts of the factory. So some of us have nice open air factories where that's very easy. In other cases, windows and doors, trying to keep windows and doors open is a good idea. That can help reduce that transmission. So here's a few resources, those WHO guidelines, the Kenya specific resources I posted here. And again, this safety shop, which had a lot of the PPE that I talked about, is in Nairobi. So I think that's all I have, and I will turn it over to Sylvia, who's going to talk about some payment practices.
Thank you, Dan. That was really informative, and I think the resources will be helpful to everybody as well. I'm just sharing my screen back again. So we are going to, the next thing we're going to talk about, whoa, this is going too far, sorry, is automating payments and orders. So Dan has discussed with you limiting physical contact among your production workers, but you also have to worry about, and he alluded that in some of his pictures with the delivery guys, you also have to worry about limiting your contact with your customers and to keep your employees safe, but also to give your customers comfort that you're keeping them safe as well. So two areas where you can do that is reducing touches between customers and yourselves and your employees is through payments and also through ordering. And so often we're accepting cash, which is pretty dirty, quite frankly. It's never washed, and it's being transmitted from person to person by their hands. And then also we're often taking orders in person where you're standing next to someone and may or may not be wearing a mask and they're talking to you. So what we're trying to do here is, since people are already being, confined to home, they're right now going to be more amenable to finding ways to keep the products flowing, keep their household running, to still get their household fuel. And so they're going to be more open to using electronic means to do so than they might normally. They might normally like to walk down to the store and pay in cash, but now either they can't or they're choosing not to. So we're going to talk a little bit about mobile money transfer, which includes M-PESA, pay bill and buy goods, and then also some e-commerce and social media platforms for ordering. First, just money mobile transfers. Again, the key benefits to this are limiting your exposure to dirty cash. And that can be between you and in customers, and also you and your employees, if you're paying. And a lot of you have casual workers that you're paying in cash, but you can also pay their wages and salaries using M-PESA or another mobile money network. And you can accept payments from customers large and small. You can pay suppliers, and you can obtain short-term credit. And using mobile money, again, gives you some additional benefits in that you're more able, in addition to the reducing transmission of the virus, you have better tracking for your payments. You have that you can then keep a record of. You also you reduce staff time. For example, if you A lot of you used to send an employee with someone on a boda to make a delivery and collect cash. Well, now you just send the boda with the delivery, and then they pay via M-PESA or some other mobile network, and you've eliminated that employee's time going with the delivery. So there's things like, there's a lot of efficiencies with moving to electronic payments. I talk about M-PESA because it's the biggest one in Kenya, widely used. 83% of Kenyans use M-PESA for transfers. The fees are low, very low, ranging from 10 to 300 shillings based on the transactions. And you can also easily transfer from your accounts to M-PESA or, sorry, move that back, or M-Shwari. M-PESA's deposit account and M-Shwari are loan accounts. So that is, that's a key benefit to using these as well. In Uganda, I know we have some Ugandans on there, and Tanzania. Tanzania has M-PESA. Uganda has like 7 different money transfer organizations, MTN being the largest network, so I'm sure you guys are all very familiar, and they have a lot of the same features that M-PESA has. So when you're thinking about these things, I think you can find the same benefits at MTM that you would find at M-PESA. Okay. All right. With M-PESA, they have LIPA M-PESA is their business component to M-PESA. So one component is pay bill and another is buy goods. Pay bill is really more for remote using with larger customers. So maybe if you have an Eco Lodge that you're supplying, or a school, and you supply them regularly, and whoever collects the shipment is not necessarily the same person who pays the bill. This is good for that, because they can just they have an account number with you, and they pay you through M-PESA, and it's all pretty organized and works well. The fees are pretty low on that, and it saves time on both sides of the organization, because you're just paying electronically, and you don't have to worry about someone delivering paper and picking up the fees. Then the other component is buy goods, which is a B2C component, and this is actually something that you maybe haven't used in the past, but you should start using now. This is great for retailers who, this is great for customers paying, retail customers paying to a business, because no till number is required. They can't reverse a transaction without your approval. You don't need to be nearby them to accept the payment. So for new customers, they can just pay you through buy goods, and the fees are very low, and the fees are paid by the business owner. So the customer is not deterred by fees for using it as a payment mechanism. And both buy goods and pay bill provide a lot of tracking and customer data storage, which will be helpful to you in the long run. So those are just a couple mechanisms which I think would be great for all of you, if you're not currently using them, to definitely check them out and try to introduce them to your customers. And I think the best way to do that is to emphasize that this is something you're doing for their safety as well as your employee safety, and because it keeps the transaction clean, and there's no exchange and contact in the exchange. Oh, and then just one other thing, and this is where you truly can get the no contact delivery. So if they pay you with buy goods, then you can just deliver to their doorstep. The delivery person doesn't have to, interact directly with the customer. So just moving on quickly to some online platforms that you should consider. These are more in terms of like generating new sales or generating orders, so that you don't have to be out in the marketplace looking for new customers. You can be online looking for new customers instead. A lot of you use Facebook and are very familiar with it, but not everyone of the people online. I know some of you have a nice Facebook page and presence and some of you do not. I highly recommend you do, because it's something that's used, that there's a pretty high usage rate of in Africa and in East Africa in particular. And so a lot of your customers are on Facebook. And it's also free. It's just free. Every business should have a Facebook page because it doesn't cost you anything. It's free advertisement. The only thing it costs you is some time to make sure you have some good pictures and content on there. But the simplest way to use Facebook is just to have a Facebook page and then to use Facebook Messenger to collect orders or arrange deliveries. So it doesn't cost you anything. You just, on your Facebook page, have a clear way for people to contact you so they can just send you a Facebook message, or they can just have a phone number to call to give you an order. And then you combine that with an M-PESA payment. And again, you have a no contact order payment system. A more advanced way to use Facebook is to form or join a Facebook selling group that promotes products for the group. So for example, in my town, we have, Chappaqua sales, there's like 10,000 people in that. Anybody can post anything for sale. It is a private group though, so people join who are interested in making purchases. You can also make it a public group if you want to let anybody join, but it's just, there's strength in numbers. So if people know there's a forum where there's a lot of people selling things, they will be attracted to it. And it's pretty easy to set up or to join one that you know of. What would be more advanced is to set up an actual Facebook shop and then link it to M-PESA or PayPal or another payment mechanism. This is, if you're a little more tech savvy, I would only recommend it if you're already on Facebook and you're pretty tech savvy with social media in general. But it's a actually pretty easy setup if you are. So it's something to consider. If you have a Facebook shop, then you kind of have a dedicated space on your Facebook for showing specified product pictures. So here's a couple examples I stole from Chabet's Facebook page, who you guys all know, at Bright Green Renewable Energy. So she just has her basic Facebook page. She gets good content on there. You see I have circled, she has a call now button that links right to a phone number. And then she also has a send message button. Those are automatic on Facebook when you set up your page, the send message anyway, the call now you set up. And it's the call to action. Call us now, give us an order, then we'll take your payment via M-PESA. Over on the right, you see that this is a Facebook group. It's a public group. This Soko Ya Kenya is just pretty much, they have all kinds of products in there. Here's one for pet food, and the guy has his WhatsApp number for inquiries. So if you want to order some pet food, you just call his WhatsApp number. This is pretty easy to set up, and you could even join this group probably. You just click on join group. Usually there's a moderator of the group who approves your entrance into it. And again, all it requires is you posting fairly regularly to keep your name, in there, and it doesn't cost anything. Some of the online platforms I want to talk about, a lot of you don't have websites yet, and it's really something you should consider, especially in this time when business has been reduced and you don't have a lot on your plate, maybe because you're either producing only at a low level or not at all because you're shut down. So now is the time to start thinking about, okay, what projects do I have? Okay, maybe I should really be focusing on my online presence right now. It's going to help me with marketing. It's going to help me in the long run anyway. There's a whole bunch of different, very simple website setup platforms that you can use. I have put a link in here later to Squarespace, but I would highly recommend you consider putting a website in place. It's just another way for people to know who you are and what you do. And on it, you can display your products and contact info for purchasing. So that's the simplest way to generate orders online, is to just say, here's who I am, and here's how to get in touch with me to order. Okay, but the key thing with this and with Facebook is that when you give someone a way to contact you, you have to be responsive. So just like if someone called you on your phone, if you ignore it, then you won't get that sale. So if they contact you through your website, you have to be paying attention to whatever email they're sending the information to, or whatever phone number they're calling, so that you can react quickly and get the sale. So that's simple website. More advanced would be one that has a display of product and links to something like PayPal with a checkout feature. This isn't quite as advanced as an online store, and you can also do this in Facebook, but it's kind of the next step up from just a basic website. And then the most advanced type of website for this would be to use like a Shopify platform or e-commerce plugin, which integrates with M-PESA and PayPal and other payment options. And that is, while relatively simple to set up, if you don't have a website yet, it's probably, I would probably start with a simple website first. Okay, so just to give you a couple examples, this I stole from our friend Ziwa at GBE. This is their website in Uganda. They have, you can see that they have a nice display of all their products, their Briquette Fire King briquettes and the price. Now they don't have an online store, but what they have is how you can contact them to buy those products. So if you're interested, you can either email them or you can call them, and they give you several numbers, or you can find their they can find their location. So it's good in that it's very clear. There's numerous ways to get in touch with them, and this is how you can buy our products. It is different though from an online store, because it's just part of their website is listing the products, so you can't actually click and buy. If you had something like, if they decided to add PayPal checkout to their site, they could actually have a click and buy function like you see on the right, where you see a product, you click on it, and it sends you into a payment function. That's not bad to set up too. I didn't actually give an example of an online store, but I'm sure you guys have all been and shopped online and you've seen e-commerce sites, but we will talk about that next. JUMIA, which Dan mentioned before, is one of those online marketplaces. This is different than you having your own online store. This is more like you participating in an Amazon type of setting, where it's a marketplace for everyone. JUMIA is a big one in Africa, and particularly in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. And they do have briquettes as a product, although they only have one offering. I think Chibet had told me that they were a little bit sticklers for presentation. So if you're going to be on a site like this, you definitely have to have good packaging, and it will have to conform to the way they deliver. But it's definitely worth checking out to see if it's another place where you can list your products. If you think about, if any of you have used Amazon or some of the other big online platforms, they really drive sales to the people on the platform. And so it's an amazing way to reach out to new consumers. Let me show you a picture of JUMIA. So here's an example of the JUMIA site. They have these Moto pineapple briquettes. They aren't carbonized, note that. And they have, and they also sell Jikos. And so you can see that, okay, if they sell these, they could sell your product. So that's why when I found that, I was like, okay, well, they're willing to take a briquette as a product, as long as you can see this Moto has a very clean bag. Prominently labeled eco-friendly, which is nice. And the Jikos they all show are all pretty clean looking and nice looking products. So let's see what else. So some of the other online platforms that you could consider that I'll just mention briefly, Copia.co.ke is like a consumer order and delivery system for non-perishable and durable goods, and they serve a lot of people in the villages, so they have a pretty extensive delivery network that they've developed using small agents throughout the country. They they also have just a delivery system, so you could possibly just use the delivery side of it. It's just worth taking a look at and seeing if they deliver to the areas where you sell, and if you can participate in their system. Pinterest is just another social media account that I know a lot of people use in Africa. So it's some place where you can just show pictures of what you sell and then have it linked to wherever you do your sales. So if you have a Facebook page and you have a Pinterest account, you can show all your products on Pinterest and they link back to your Facebook page, and then people can figure out how to order from your site. And then the last one, this isn't necessarily related to households, but it's just another potential for selling, is goforworldbusiness.com. This is like a international listing of buyers and sellers of different kinds of goods on a larger scale. And they had a pretty big listing of different types of charcoal products. So I thought it was pretty interesting to look at. So I'll just show you. Here's Copia. They sell Jicos. I couldn't find any charcoal on their site, sorry. Go back. I couldn't find any charcoal on their site, but they did find Jicos. So to me, that means they're open to energy products. And Pinterest, they had tons of charcoal. I was shocked. I always think of Pinterest as very like crafts, and you're going to buy homemade earrings and stuff on there, but nope, they had a lot of charcoal. People make a lot of charcoal. So that's just shows you that it's another place where you can show your product and possibly lead to online sales. And then the final thing here is this Go for World Business. So you can see they have all these listings here for different types of charcoal, and then they have a listing of who's supplying it and who's buying it. So here's a supplier from Mombasa of char briquettes, of coconut char briquettes. I'm wondering if that's Saeed, maybe not, but someone we know. But you can see that this could potentially be a good place to connect with buyers of charcoal, or other suppliers if you're not right now producing, but you have customers who have need. You may want to partner with other people to supply your existing customers. So I am, just to wrap up then, I just want to say, there's a lot of different things that you can do, sorry, lost my presentation there. There's a lot of different things you can do in this time, whether it be in production or reaching out to new customers. And we are happy to discuss more of these things. And I just want to look and see, I'm going to look right now and see if there's any questions, and we can start opening up to questions and see if there's anything else you guys want to discuss. I see some comments in the chat box. I'm going to unmute Dan too. Dan, you tell, is there anything else we should add to our presentation? And I'm looking through the chat box at the same time to see if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, there was one question. I'm not sure who it is, but they were asking about capacity in their production. Okay. So somebody had a 300 kg per day production. They're asking how many people. I mean, the general guidance, especially around the virus, is that in order to create social distancing conditions, you need basically one person. I said per 4 square meters. That's kind of the estimate. So that's assuming that no two people are going to be within 2 meters of each other. So if you have a 10 meter by 10 meter production space, I mean, you're really only supposed to have about 2 to 3 people in that space at a time. So that means we have to get a little creative about how to staff. Beatrice has asked about masks and surgical masks versus N95 face masks, pricing, how often you can use them. I know the N95 masks can be a little bit expensive. I know some that I purchased a 20 pack and they were, I think I paid around $35 US for that. So not cheap. And I think actually in a lot of places it's gotten more expensive because of short supply. Surgical masks, I think, are often cheaper and they're still quite effective. I think two notes that I wanted to add on those were one of the most important factors for the masks is that they fit well. So this comes from these folks at Smart Air that I was talking to. If it doesn't fit well, then you're essentially breathing without the mask, right? All the air and everything is leaking in around the edges where it doesn't fit well, the gaps. So encouraging people to use a mask that fits well, even if it's an N95, it may not be working well. And then the other thing is reusing masks is a common question. And when you wash like a mask, most of these masks that I put up, either DIY or N95, they actually become less effective. So you're either washing out some of that material that makes up the filter, or you're rearranging those fibers so that they don't filter as well. So each time you wash them, they become less and less effective at filtering. So in general, Smart Air and others have said, do not wash masks. And actually they get better at filtering the more they clog up. Of course, it becomes harder to breathe. So after some time, you want to just change the mask.
Dan, I want to add something on the masks, because one thing that we have found here in the US is that when you talk too much about ineffectiveness of the mask, people don't want to wear it. They go, oh, it's just an excuse not to wear it because it's not perfect, so don't wear it. But one thing we have focused on a lot here is wearing the mask to stop your spread as opposed to stopping the inhalation of the virus. And the mask, even the not great masks, can stop the spread of your droplets pretty well. So I just point that out because you don't want to give anyone an excuse not to wear a mask. And if they don't have the N95s, there's still benefit from the other masks in people stopping to spread it as opposed to keeping them from getting the virus. So it's just a distinction, they're making here. We're saying wear the mask to protect other people as opposed to protect yourself. And if you wear a mask, even not a great one, you're stopping your own spread to a large extent, probably not 100%, but still that's important. And it just emphasizes that you're thinking of other people, not just yourself when you're wearing the mask.
Yeah, Beatrice had a good comment. She just sent to me, if anyone wants to combine and do a bulk purchase, she's interested in that.
Oh, that's a great idea, Beatrice. I see, Dorothy, you asked me if there's a link for tutorials on developing a website. Yeah, I have in the screen and the bottom of the presentation that I was sending you some links to all these different things I talked about, how to set up the Facebook store, how to set up a Squarespace website. Squarespace is a pretty easy plug and play website, that has, pre-done graphics and everything else. If you are doing a website, you might want to consider getting Adobe a picture subscription so that you can license some good pictures, because very few of us have good enough pictures that look good on a website. So that's just another tip. It's not that expensive, and you could just do a 1 or 2 month subscription to download enough pictures to use on the website. Does anybody else have any other questions? You can raise your hand if you just want to make a comment. Ziwa, I don't know if you're there still, but if you have any interest, if you want to make a comment as to, since I picked on you and used your website, Don't know if you want to make a comment as to how it works and whether you get many leads from that. I'm going to unmute you, and then you decide. You let us know if you can comment. Maybe he's not there anymore. Okay, I'm not hearing from Ziwa, so maybe he had to step away. Okay, anything else? Dan, what do you think? Do we need,
I got Beatrice sent me another comment. She's saying that delivery is the issue. Selling is not a problem. Sounds like Beatrice is able to sell, but transporting and delivering is the main issue.
okay, so one thing I didn't mention that I meant to is that we're going to be doing another webinar on pivoting your marketing in the end of June. And at that time, we're going to talk about some innovative distribution strategies. But I know that some of the people, at least in Uganda, have been reaching out to different boda drivers like Safe Boda, and trying to partner with other organizations that are already doing deliveries, so that they can improve their delivery situation. It's a little more difficult, I know, for Beatrice because you're in such a remote location. But we will give that some thought as well for the next webinar. One thing though, Beatrice, maybe check out Copia, because Copia may be a good solution for you, since they seem to be good at getting deliveries from and to remote locations.
Yeah, I think something I'll add quickly on delivery also is for those of you that aren't in the UBPA group, in the WhatsApp group, we've actually had some people who have orders that they can't fulfill. Either they can't deliver it or they don't have the inventory. And then looking for others who can then supply those. Maybe they're closer, it's easier for them to access that customer. So that could be a good approach. And then we saw that in Uganda, Divine, who's doing briquettes made from bamboo, she's just getting started, but I thought she did a nice thing. And it can be difficult, but just to start out and get a bunch of interest in your product, she did a big kind of giveaway. She did a big product launch and then gave away small packs of briquettes within a community, kind of a low-income community in Kampala. And apparently it was a huge thing, and easily they gave away all their briquettes, but that it could also help to attract more interest from those people later on.
Right, and build some loyalty since they see you helping the community. It's linked to
and people probably need it right now, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I don't see any more comments or questions. If there are no other comments, I think we're going to wrap it up in the interest of your time. I'm glad you guys could join us today. I don't have a formal way for feedback, but if you could just send me or Dan a note if you thought it was helpful or not, that would be great. We'd really appreciate it. And then that will inform us for the next one. And be on the lookout for the information for the next webinar, which I said most likely I still have to confirm, but will most likely be June 25th. And with that, hope this was useful, and have a good day, everybody.